Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari Yasoda Nandana Pradajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Pradajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari Yasoda Nandana Pradajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Pradajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Vishwapad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Jai Astra Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kota Vaishnavani Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Prem Sigaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Maya Purnavdam ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Gau Premanandi. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories, Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 3, text number 15. That's what I have here. That's a pretty good shot.
So.
And you may go.
Yaduha vavatava punar adabrakartat ihasamahutas tatratadiyam mandanam nastadhyad devahelanam devadevar hasi samhena sarvan pativodham avidusham.
I don't know if there's anybody in the movement that could chant prose like Dravida Prabhu. Yet, because Uha Vava, indeed, Tava, your, Puna, again, Adabra Karta, O Lord who performs many activities, Iha, here, in this arena of sacrifice, Samahutaha, invited, Tatra, therefore, Arthadiyam, who aspire to fulfill material desires, Mundanam, not very intelligent, Na, of us, Tat, that, Yat, which, Devahilanam, disrespect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Deva Deva, Lord of Lords, Arhasi, please, Samyena, because of your equipoised position, Sarvan, everything, Prativodhum, tolerate, Avidhusam, of us who are all ignorant. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki. O Lord, you perform many wonderful activities. Our only aim was to acquire a son by performing this great sacrifice. Therefore our intelligence is not very sharp. We are not experienced in ascertaining life's goal. By inviting you to this negligible sacrifice for some material motive, we have certainly committed a great offense at your lotus feet. Therefore, O Lord of Lords, please excuse our offense because of your causeless mercy and equal mind. Purport. The priests were certainly unhappy to have called the Supreme Lord from Vaikuntha for such an insignificant reason. A pure devotee never wants to see the Lord unnecessarily. The Lord is engaged in various activities, and the pure devotee does not want to see him whimsically for his own sense gratification. The pure devotee simply depends on the Lord's mercy, and when the Lord is pleased, he can see him face to face. The Lord is unseen even by demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. By calling on the Supreme Lord, the priests of Nabi Maharaj proved themselves unintelligent. Nonetheless, the Lord came out of his causeless mercy. All of them therefore wanted to be excused by the Lord. Worship of the Supreme Lord for material gain is not approved by authorities, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7:16. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukhatirnorjana artam jigyasa artharti jnani cha bharatarsava. O best among the Bharatas, Arjuna, 4 kinds of men render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. Initiation into bhakti begins when one is in a distressed condition, or in want of money, or when one is inquisitive to understand the Absolute Truth. Nonetheless, people who approach the Supreme Lord in this way are not actually devotees. They are accepted as pious, Sukatina, due to their inquiring about the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not knowing the various activities and engagements of the Lord, such people unnecessarily disturb the Lord for material gain. However, the Lord is so kind that even though disturbed, He fulfills the desires of such beggars. The pure devotee is anyabilasita sunya. He has no motive behind his worship. He is not conducted by the influence of maya in the form of karma or jnana. The pure devotee is always prepared to execute the order of the Lord without personal consideration. The Ridvaja, the priest at the sacrifice, knew very well the distinction between karma and bhakti, and because they considered themselves under the influence of karma, fruit of activity, they begged the Lord's pardon. They knew that the Lord had been invited to come for some paltry reason. Om Jnanatimandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukram Kotava Chalang Pangun Lang Hayate Gurim Yat Kripa Taraham Bande Shigurum Dinataranam Vancha Kalpa Tubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Bhavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Here it's mentioned that they thought themselves, the priests, thought themselves not very sharp in intelligence. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's stated, Samsara kupe patitang visira musitekshanam grustam kala hinatmanam konyas tratum tisra. That the intelligence of the living entity is stolen away by the activities of sense gratification. It's like here in this world, all over the universe, there's thieves. They steal cars and they steal money and steal all kinds of things. So here we're hearing how actually this verse was spoken by the by a prostitute, Pingala, Krishna, Samsara kupe patitang. This is in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is Krishna's instructing Uddhava, and he tells about this Avadhuta, who learned from many different gurus, and this prostitute was one of the gurus. Just like you know about this Chintamani, she was the guru of Bhavamangala Thakur. So he learned from her, because this prostitute, she was out trying to get customers. And customers would come, or people would come and say, "Oh, maybe he'll be interested in me." And then they'd walk by and, "Oh, this looks like a nice man. He'll be interested in me." And they just kept on walking by, and no one's interested in her. So eventually, she became detached, and she chanted this verse: The very important verse. Samsara kupe, patitang, visayar muksiteksanam, grustam kala hinamanam, konyas chatu madhishra. That the intelligence of the living entity is stolen away. So imagine someone stealing your intelligence. I mean, geez, that's I mean, taking your money, all right, well, that's done, you know, but your intelligence, that's something that's we consider pretty valuable, right? Our intelligence. But who takes our intelligence? The uncontrolled mind and senses take away our intelligence. So then she goes on to say that the intelligence of the living is stolen away by the activities of sense creativity, and in that condition one falls down into the well of repeated birth and death. And within that well one is seized by the deadly serpent of time. And who can save one but the Supreme Lord? Yeah. So this is our situation. We're trying to now our intelligence is taken away by this by the mind, by the uncontrolled senses. So now we're trying to get our intelligence back. And Krishna is known as Diyampati, which means the Lord of Intelligence. So we pray to Krishna for intelligence again. And what is it? Prabhupada explains intelligence means to know the difference between matter and spirit and the controller of both. That's intelligence. It's like we have some people there, they got high IQs, 220 IQs, some people got up there, that's right, way up there. But if you ask these people, who are you? No, I'm Joe Schmo, you know, I'm a professor at UCLA University. But they don't know who they are. They're not actually. But you ask any bhakti that's been around for, you know, a few days even. Like we have Bhakti Daniel. Bhakti Daniel, who are you? You don't know? All right. You got to read the books a little bit more there. You're doing a lot of saving, no time to read. Okay. So we're spirit soul. Doesn't take long to understand that we're not the body, we're spirit soul. And this is, actually it's pretty revolutionary. Yeah. To have this, even to have a theoretical understanding that we're spirit soul. It's pretty radical. Even in religions, you ask any practitioner of another religion, who are you? I'm Joe Schmo, and this and that. They're not going to say I'm spirit soul. But you ask a devotee, who are you? Any devotee that's been around for spirit soul, eternal servant of Krishna. So this mind and senses take away this intelligence, which is so important, so valuable. And it begins with contemplation. Contemplation. Dhyayato visyang pumsas. Sangat sanjayate kama krodha jayate. That while contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. From lust, anger. From anger, delusion. From delusion, bewilderment and memory. When the memory is bewildered, the intelligence is lost. And when the intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Yeah. So it all begins with contemplating. It's like yesterday I was at Balboa Park, and there was a couple of was walking by this ice cream truck. You know, these little small ice cream trucks, and they were both, you know, overweight. You know, they weren't obese. They weren't like overly overweight, but they were well overweight. So they walked by this little miniature ice cream truck. They walked by, and they both turned around, and they were looking at the ice cream truck. I could just see, and you know, they're having a battle with the mind and intelligence, right? The mind is saying, "Oh, come on, let's go." Then they're talking. Yeah, they're actually there for about 5 minutes, believe it or not, contemplating whether they should go for it or not. Because sugar and milk and helps you gain weight. So finally, the mind won, and they both went over, and they got ice creams. So this is the nature. You're contemplating, and then gradually thinking and feeling and willing. So we gotta check the mind, and that checking the mind comes by this hearing and chanting. This nurtures our intelligence, actually, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, by reading Bhagavad Gita, chanting Hare Krishna. All this nurtures our intelligence, so that we become sharp again. It's like here, it says that our intelligence is not very sharp. So we want our intelligence to become very sharp, and that's by this connection with Krishna. And Krishna says, "Manmana bhava madbhakto." Always think of me. Become my devotee. Worship me. Offer your homage unto me. Thus you'll come to me. So this helps our intelligence to become sharp just by thinking of Krishna, because Krishna is the most intelligent. Very high IQ. He knows everything. So, what's that? Can't get higher than that. So by this connection with Krishna, we also become intelligent. So we have to think of Krishna. And Krishna comes to perform his amazing pastimes, so we could think of him, something to think of. Just like the perfection of chanting is when we're remembering the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord. This is the perfection of chanting Hare Krishna. Name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna. And in this age, the best way to remember Krishna is Kaler Doshinad Hey Rajan Asti Heko Mahadgana. That in this age there's so many faults. Wherever you look, there's so many faults. But the one good quality is that simply by chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, one can become completely purified of all material contamination and develop one's love for Krishna and go back home. So this is a special handicap for the Kali Yugites. Just by chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, we become purified of all attraction to this material world, to material sense gratification. Avartam jnanam etena jnanino nityavaya kamarupena konteya dusprena lenacha. The wise living in its pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and burns like fire. This is the nature of lust. It burns, never satisfied. It burns like fire. And in the last sentence of the purport of that verse, Prabhupada says that there may appear to be some happiness in this material sense gratification, but this so-called happiness is the ultimate enemy of the living entity. Not just, Prabhupada says, it's the ultimate enemy of the living entity, because this is what keeps us from pursuing Krishna, that so-called pleasure. That so-called pleasure keeps them from pursuing what is real happiness. So it's so important that we hear nicely. Just like here, it's mentioned that that they consider themselves to be offensive because they approach Krishna for some, as it said here, some paltry purpose. So there's many offenses. We chant these 10 offenses. Every morning we chant these 10 offenses. And this is pretty much what keeps us from getting closer to Krishna. these offenses. And one of the main offenses is to maintain material attachment, these material desires. Even after understanding so many instructions on this matter, we maintain these material desires. So we don't want to maintain these things. That's what keeps us locked up. We want to become free of them. Nirvana. It's amazing. They had that music group named Nirvana. Means free of this, of material desires, material attraction. So because of these offenses, it's difficult to think of Krishna. What to speak of seeing Krishna. Yeah. So this process is so powerful that eventually we'll become free of offenses to Krishna. And we'll just want to serve Krishna. We'll just want to please Krishna. Not an easy thing, not an easy task to acquire, but it's possible. Katanchana smate yasman duskaram sukaram bhavet rishmate vitaritam shat Sri Chaitanya namamitam. This is spoken by Krishnadas Kaviraj. He says, if one remembers Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then very difficult things become very easy. But if one forgets Lord Chaitanya, then very easy things become very difficult. So Lord Chaitanya is very merciful, and therefore he comes in Kali Yuga, and he gives us this process. See, Lord Krishna, when he came, he taught the Bhagavad Gita. Fantastic teaching. Bhagavad Gita is just wonderful. But Lord Chaitanya came, and he was the example of the teachings. He showed by example. He came as a devotee to show us how to be a devotee. So he's very, very merciful. So therefore we take shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And his mission was to come and to inspire people to be Krishna conscious. And therefore, there was one devotee that wanted to go with Lord Chaitanya. He was staying. Lord Chaitanya was staying with this devotee for 4 months. And when Lord Chaitanya was leaving, he wanted to go with him. But Lord Chaitanya said no. Yare deka tarika Krishna upadesh amar agyayagar hanatare desh. No, you stay. And you instruct everyone of the teachings of Krishna as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is Lord Chaitanya's desire, that we give this message out to others. And there's people that are searching. Just like here in this purport, Prabhupada mentions this very famous verse, Chaturbadha bhajante mam jana sukhatirnordana artha gigyasa artharthi jnani cha bharatarshava. That there's 4 types of people who surrender to Krishna. Now let's see if any of you know what they are besides Balaram, Dravida, and Mukunda, Charan. Who knows? Inquisitive, 1. Distressed. Yeah. 1 more. Looking for the absolute truth. Yes. So these are the 4 types of people who go to Krishna. And many people go to Krishna because of distress. Because this material world is dukkhalayam shashvatam. It's a place of suffering. So everybody is suffering, more or less. Some more, some less, but everybody is suffering. And some people, fortunate people, they go to Krishna when they're in distress. And I'll tell you one interesting thing that happened. There was a young man, maybe 19 years old. He was a criminal in Estonia. And he was a big criminal. And he was like in the top 10 wanted list. So he thought, I better get out of this country because they're going to catch me. So he decided to go traveling. He went around Europe. And in his travels, he got on a quest to know what is the truth. You know, who am I? What happens at the time of death? He was asking very intelligent questions. And he was talking to people, you know, and gradually it became a strong spiritual quest. You know, who is God? You know. So many people told him, you know, you want to know who God, you should go to India. And Prabhupada used to say of one Chinese professor that said, if you want to know God, then you have to go to India. He would quote this one professor, remember that? So he kept on hearing that. So he decided, I'm going to go to India. So he hitchhiked to India. And he's traveling around, and in his travels in India, he got one of Prabhupada's books. And this is, you know, he was reading so many books and talking to so many people. When he got one of Prabhupada's books, he said, now this makes sense. He was very attracted to Prabhupada's teachings. So he met a devotee. He didn't know, he got the book from somebody and don't know how he got it, but then he met a devotee and he said, oh yeah, I've been reading this book, Science of Self-Realization. It's very nice. And he invited him to the temple. So he liked the temple, he liked the devotees, and he was coming back, coming back, and eventually he became a bhakta. This is a Chowpatty temple. And after a few years, he decided to call his mother and let her know that he was in India. He hadn't contacted her. Now he's a monk, you know, he's living in the ashram. So he's talking to her, and then he says, you know, I forgot, I'm a monk now. I thought I should let you know I'm a monk. And she's like, what? I can't believe it. You're a monk? I said, yeah, I've been a monk now for a couple of years. And she said, well, what kind of a monk are you? I'm a Hare Krishna monk. And she said, well, Haribo. And he said, how do you know Haribo? She said, I'm a devotee too. He said, no. He said, yeah, one devotee, he was going door to door, and he came to the door. I bought a Bhagavad Gita, and I like it. I'm going to the temple, and I'm initiated. He was still a bhakta. Surprise. So he was inquisitive. He was searching. And Krishna came to him in a nice way. Therefore, we're distributing these books. The people, they're searching. So we got to give these books, you know, so people that are searching, the books are there. The books are available. Now we distributed over 500 million. So a lot of books are sitting in people's homes. And when they feel some distress or some inquisitiveness, books are there. Another amazing story. This couple, they were living in the East Coast, and the husband, he was working, and his wife was pregnant. And she thought, what am I going to do? So she saw Bhagavad Gita. They had a Bhagavad Gita. They had it for 10 years, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. So she thought, well, let me read the Bhagavad Gita. Good way to pass the time. So she read the Bhagavad Gita, and she was completely overwhelmed. And she was telling her husband about it. Every day she'd tell her husband, well, I read this, I read that. And then he also became inquisitive. And he read the Bhagavad Gita. And they both became devotees. There's no temple around. Then, because of the particular work he had, he was sent to Boise. There's no temple in Boise. But they were super enthusiastic about Krishna. So they decided to turn their house into a temple. I mean, a real temple. They started out with just their living room, but then the neighbors moved out, so they bought that house and they joined it. So it's a pretty good-sized temple. And her son was schooled at home, homeschooling. And their other son, 2 sons. And one of her sons is famous now all over our movement, Radhika Raman Prabhu. So that's how he became a devotee, by her getting the Bhagavad Gita and absorbing it. I mean, just the consciousness, is there, so that it affects the child also, the consciousness of the mother. And she was probably reading it to her husband, so he was hearing there in the womb. And he's just like he's one of our jewels in our society. It's amazing devotee. And his brother also. He graduated from Harvard University. It was like 22 or something like that. PhD at 22. It's just like an absolute genius. Yeah. So, one of our... Huh? Yeah, he was, yeah. Well, he had his PhD at 22. Generally, you're like 30 or 32 before you get your PhD, but he was just going right through you. I used to go there and distribute books. They would distribute books at the university with me, both of them. There was another neighbor who was also the same way. I forgot his name now, but they all became professors. 3 of them. Yeah. Special, very special souls. Now sometimes devotees, they join our society and they're engaged in devotional service, but for some reason they leave. Prabhupada said 90% of his disciples will leave, so many left. So there's one instance of a Prabhupada disciple. You might remember him, Ramdas. Ramdas, you remember Ramdas? So he was in Miami, and he had some difficulty, so he left, and he's surfing there on the beach, in Florida. And as he's surfing, a shark comes towards him, and it's a big one. And he's like, "Oh no!" So he's paddling away, trying to get away, and the shark's coming. And he's praying to Krishna, "Krishna, please, if you get me out of this, I promise I'll go to the temple and I'll never leave." So as he's praying like that, he's paddling, and the shark comes and he takes a bite at him. He gets him a little bit, but mainly he got the board. He was able to move out of the way, but somehow he got some mercy there, Krishna. But then he went to the hospital. That's the stress. That's the stress. So he went to the hospital. He got stitched up, and he went to the temple, and he never left. Yeah. Another instance of a person who was in the movement, and he was doing nicely, but then again he for whatever reason he left, and then he had a car, and he was fixing his car, and somehow the engine it fell on his chest. It wasn't a big car with a huge engine, but it was on his chest, and it was big enough so he couldn't move it. And he was just stuck there, and there's nobody around. And he started praying the same way, "Krishna, please forgive me, please. But if you could help me out of this situation, I promise. I promise I'll go to the temple and I won't leave." So then, 10 minutes later, he's still got this thing on it. Imagine that, jeez, an engine, 10 minutes later, someone comes by and helps him out, and he gets out of it, and he went to the temple. So, Krishna's special way of showing mercy sometimes. Oh yeah, they're in the book, sure. Yeah. Now sometimes people, they are curious. and then turn out to be inimical after they find out a little bit. Just like there was one devotee distributing books in Denver, Nidra. Nidra is one of our Queen Kuntis in ISKCON. She goes out on book distribution every day. She's been distributing books since 1973, almost 50 years. She's going back to Godhead. She's like a real saint, saintly lady, just unbelievable. So she's distributing books, and she distributes a book to this lady, and she gets it just because she's curious. But then she threw it away, and Nidra saw her throw the book away. And she was thinking, oh, what an unfortunate soul. Finally, after who knows how many millions of lives, finally they get Krishna and they throw it away. Like there's one pastime of devotee said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, sometimes they throw the books away. And Prabhupada said, what do you expect? These people are throwing their babies in the trash. Yeah. They're killing their own babies. So you're surprised they're throwing a book in the trash? Don't be surprised. So this lady was visiting our restaurant. We have a restaurant, nice restaurant there in Denver. And Nidra was there taking prasadam, and she saw her. And she said, oh, how you doing? Yeah, I saw you in the airport. You got a book from me. She said, yeah, I remember. I'm not here about your philosophy. I'm just here to get some food. You guys got good food. So she kept coming and taking prasadam, and then she started talking to other devotees, and then started talking to Nidra, and she started becoming friends with the devotees there. And she became so friendly. Some devotees started telling her about the chanting of Hare Krishna, and she got some beads and started chanting, and bought some more books. Didn't throw those away. And eventually she got initiated. It's amazing. Someone so inimical, throw the book in the trash, but then she becomes a devotee. And she actually became one of the few devotees in America that cultivates prisoners. Yeah, she had hundreds of prisoners that she would keep in touch with. Yeah. So. Huh? No. So there's many ways that people come to Krishna consciousness. There's another story of a person who had joined our society, lady, and she also had some difficulty, and she left, and she married one non-devotee man. And this is about 10 years after she had left the movement. She was driving with her husband, and they got in a car accident. This is up in the Bay Area. And the car is turning. And she's chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, just screaming the Hare Krishna mantra. Yeah. And then the car stops. And both of them are like, are we alive? Are we still alive? And they're like, and she says, well, I'm okay. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. And then he says to her, what were you screaming? What was that? And she said, oh, I never told you. I used to be a Hare Krishna devotee. And he just saved our life. Nothing happened to them. Both of them were just fine. And then he said to her, well, tell me more. So they're sitting in the completely demolished car. And she's preaching to him, telling him about Krishna. Yeah? And he's like, wow, you should have told me. This is great. And he just saved her life. So she came back to Krishna consciousness. She used to be a distributor, book distributor, and she started distributing books again. He got initiated. So, amazing how Krishna takes care of his devotees. So, on that note, yes, Dravida Prabhu.
One comment on that all these pastimes kind of have something similar, and that is, when you read Chattavada Bhajante Mamanjan Sukhanati, and you read, okay, the first one is Arto, one who is troubled. And when I always thought that means, mostly people who are, they go to church, it's a very common thing, people are in trouble. And if their trouble is solved, then oftentimes they fade away, But this is a different view of it, is that Krishna will, if someone has got some sincerity, he'll put you into such trouble that you're at that moment you're taking shelter of Krishna, and you suddenly realize the benefit, and then you become a serious devotee. So you expanded my view of that particular. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vijay Krishna
I have
Prabhu.
a question.
Okay.
May I, or should I wait?
You may.
Vijay Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances, and thank you very much for your wonderful class. Prabhu, your spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, used to say that we shouldn't go to the temple to ask for our daily bread, but instead we should go to the temple for the glorification of the Lord. So my question is, what is the end result of glorifying the Lord in the temple? Is it that anything happens? Is it that everything happens because of this glorification? Or is it that nothing happens? In my life, in the life of the worshipper, of the one who is going to the temple for glorification.
Well, if one goes to the temple to glorify Krishna, then it's glorious. One gets purified. And sometimes Krishna gives special mercy. Yasyahamadu granami hirasya taddanam shadai. So yeah, glorification of Krishna, this is what purifies the soul. Generally, people in this world are glorifying so many non-devotees, absolutely no good out of that. But if someone glorifies Krishna, then we get purified. This is a result of glorifying Krishna, so we get purified. And this is, as I mentioned, this is why Krishna comes, to perform his activities, so that we can hear about him and glorify him and get purified. And the more we glorify Krishna to others, the more we get special mercy from Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Dravida Prabhu.
We're hearing again and again in these purports how Nabhi has a material desire, and the priests are apologizing. Please excuse our offense because of your causeless mercy. And yet, the result of this so-called material interaction or motivation is that Krishna agrees to, Narayan agrees to appear as Rishabdev. So, how do we understand all of this this idea that this is a material interaction here? It doesn't seem to compute.
Well, this in the translation there at the end, the last sentence. Therefore, O Lord of Lords, please excuse our offense because of our causeless mercy. Because of your causeless mercy and equal, it's the causeless mercy of Krishna. That even though they were offensive, just like, oh, come on, Putana. I mean, there's so many examples of people that just like approach Krishna in a very derogatory, horrible way. But Krishna's causeless mercy. So there was the causeless mercy that Krishna accepted, and he even went there, and they got the darshan of Lord Vishnu and Rishabdev, and he actually appeared as a son of King Navi. And so this is the causeless mercy of Krishna. He's very merciful. So this is our hope, that we could somehow or another go back to Godhead, the causeless mercy of Krishna. Just try our very best and hope, against hope, for that causeless mercy of Krishna. Yes, Bhakti Daniel.
Thank you, Vijay Prabhu. I just have a question about the pastime, about the one where, the lady was rolling with her husband in the car.
Yeah.
Right. Where was this?
This is on the highway. This is like, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. Bay Area, yeah.
Okay, so they drove off a cliff, is that?
Not a cliff. Just they were on the road, and somehow they got in an accident, and the car's turning.
Oh.
And then it stopped, and somehow they were, by the mercy of Krishna, they were okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but she's screaming, as loud as she could. I'm sure, the Hare Krishna mantra. Give it to Balaram behind you.
So Dravida Prabhu mentioned something about a book you have in a book.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about that book and how many pages? What's the general idea? When is it coming? Where is it printed, stuff like that?
Good question. People have been asking that for a long time. It's actually ready to be printed, but because of the COVID, it's in Bombay now. They're gonna print it there. It's about 600 pages. And I got one, actually in Russia, the one Sankirtan, Ambarish Maharaj, dear friend of mine, he translated into Russian some of the chapters. And he told me, he said, Vijay, I've read all the Sankirtan books. Yours is the best. So I was a little touched. But it's a lot of philosophical understanding of the book and a lot of stories. Because the devotee told me, he said, Vida, you have so many amazing stories. You got to put it in a book, otherwise it's going to be lost. Nobody will be able to hear these things. So there's a lot of nice stories are in it, and a lot of quotes from others, like Vaiseshika Prabhu is in there, Radhana Swami is in there, and book distributors, a lot of book distributors.
So it'll be a BBT book, obviously.
Yeah.
And when did the Mumbai devotees say that they'll be able to print it?
Well, we're still in the COVID thing, so it's ready. So hopefully within maybe a few months. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Dravida has it actually. He's got it in e form, so you can get some of it from him.
If I get a book, can you sign it, Vijay? Prabhu, please.
Might cost you.
I'll pay it.
No, the only cost is dedicate your life to distributing Prabhupada's books. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I wanted to say, Amoghila Prabhu is with us today.
Amogha Leela is on Traveling Sankirtan. He's in the Midwest.
Yeah,
Amogha Leela, he's on. He's listening. Oh, Amogha Leela ki jai. I hope you do huge on book distribution. Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Thank you.